This is Product of Newfoundland, where we talk about the strange truths and tall tales of a foggy island, Newfoundland, Canada. I'm Robert, and today I'm interested in the Brigus Tunnel. I like Brigus. The town in eastern Newfoundland is among one of the oldest English settlements on the island, and it's got to be one of the most beautiful. The town is full of these handsome old homes and well-constructed buildings. It reminds me of a different, wealthier time in rural Newfoundland. But for all the striking architecture, perhaps there's no greater image of its prosperous past than a hole in the ground, the Brigus Tunnel. The tunnel is a 30-meter pathway that travels through a solid wall of rock. It's about 3 meters wide and 3 meters high. It was built for Captain Abram Bartlett in 1860. Bartlett wanted an easy way to access his boat, the SS Panther. Abram Bartlett was born in Brigus in 1819 and was a very successful captain in the seal hunt and Labrador fishery. He was part owner of the ship and captained her for 17 years. He operated a fishing business under the name of A. Bartlett and Sons in Labrador. If you don't know anything about him, you've almost certainly heard of his grandson, Captain Bob Bartlett, the Arctic explorer. At the time Bartlett was sailing, Brigus was a busy port with many boats crowding the harbor. About 1859, in order to get usable berthage, Bartlett acquired land opposite Molly's Island, adjacent to deep water. The site was great for docking, but it was surrounded by a 7-meter rocky ridge, making it incredibly difficult to unload the ships. Cargo had to be carried over the ridge using a cart and wheelbarrow. It was back-breaking work, and the tunnel was the solution. It created a short, level path for unloading cargo. The tunnel was cut by John Hoskins, a Cornish miner who probably worked at the Tilt Cove copper mine. Hoskins built the tunnel during the summer of 1860 while Bartlett was away at the Labrador fishery. He hand-drilled holes into a rock face, and as he was about 7 years ahead of Alfred Noble's invention of dynamite, he had to pack them with gunpowder. The powder was detonated and the debris was cleared, and by the time the Bartlett crew returned, the tunnel was ready and unloading the ship was a much easier affair. They continued to make use of the tunnel until about 1910, when they just didn't need it anymore. There are signs of the cod fishery all along the Newfoundland coast, but few of these historic ones managed to change the landscape as boldly as the Brigus Tunnel did, and few are likely to reach as far into the future. When the tunnel was constructed, the fishery was at the middle of Newfoundland life, and communities with good access to cod flourished. As the cod fishery changed, and then eventually ground to a halt, life in Newfoundland changed. In 1884, when the tunnel was in use, Brigus had a population of 2,365 people. But by 2016, the population was less than a third of that, barely over 700, and life in Brigus looked pretty different. The Brigus Tunnel stands as a reminder of the time when the Newfoundland fishery was strong enough to move mountains, or at least it could, if people could remember the real reason the tunnel was built. I think the story of the Brigus Tunnel is pretty interesting just as it is. Hand-cut, using gunpowder. But not everybody agrees, and they've had to make up their own tunnel mythology. And maybe that's understandable. When the fishing industry declined, it probably got hard to believe such a piece of infrastructure could ever have been worth the time and money for a fishing business. So less than 50 years after the tunnel fell into disuse, stories of an alternate origin began creeping into print. In 1947, the Atlantic Guardian wrote, "A walk to the tunnel will bring to mind the doings of centuries ago. As one remembers according to tradition, the tunnel was used for the quick landing of contraband." Listen, whether anybody used the tunnel to land contraband, I don't know. But it certainly wasn't centuries back. The tunnel didn't exist 100 years before the article was written. Reaching even further back, the Newfoundland and Labrador tourism website likes to remind us that some people believe the tunnel might have connections to pirate Peter Easton, and that somehow the tunnel signals the location of his hidden treasure. Peter Easton plied the waters off Newfoundland in the early 1600s and is thought to have died shortly after. Long before anybody dreamed of the Brigus Tunnel. It is fun to imagine, though, but it's completely impossible. And that's it. The strange truth and tall tales of the Brigus Tunnel. It's just another one of the yarns that knit ya. For more info on the Brigus Tunnel, including pictures and video, check out the blog productofnewfoundland.ca.